ma'am, I think. Okay. Shall we start again, ma'am?
Like from first slide, or
No, ma'am. Uh,
yeah.
okay.
So do you want me to start from here?
Can okay, ma'am. I will just give the introduction because it was getting recorded and we uh, went in between. So,
Yeah, I don't
is that
mind.
okay? Okay. Okay, good evening to all. I would like to welcome Namakiri Lakshmi ma'am. As we all know, she is currently working as an occupational therapist in the Alberta Health Services at the Wainwright Health Center in Canada. So last time we were discussing about the transfer assessment, and today she is going to discuss with us about the dysphagia management. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So, what do you guys think? Do you want me to go from slide one, or can I continue from factors affecting slide eating? Or
Uh, we can do this, ma'am.
okay, perfect. So, what are the factors that can affect our eating performance? So, as I told, like it's like your mind, body should coordinate, then only your performance, your occupational performance will be fine. So, if there is a change in your mood, like state of mind, like a depression or like change in appetite, a loss of interest, so all these things can affect your eating habits. So that is one factor where we see there's loss of weight. People come and complain that there's loss of weight, but there is no reason that they can like say to us. And yeah, appetite. If appetite is often reduced, or it's like they always feel full when they eat smaller amounts of food, then that affects our eating performance too. Vision. So vision is one important thing when I work with like geriatric population. So when you see in a plate that everything is like a same color, or everything is like colorless, faded, or it's like bits and pieces, so it's not like, if you see a bread, it doesn't look like a bread, it does look like a small um piece of like what to say, like a biscuit. So it's like you don't get that full view of what you are eating, and that can affect your eating performance too. So vision declines with age and can be hastened with certain medical conditions and dementia. So the ability to see and recognize the food is diminished, which may affect the ability to eat independently. Taste buds. Taste and sensation change with also changes with age. So you might have heard most of your grandparents and you like people will always say, no, there's no more interest in food, because there might be a reason that there's change in sensation, like taste sensation. So that will like decrease their enjoyment of having a food, and they slowly take small amounts of food. And the digestive system. So when the age goes higher and higher, people say our digestive system gets like lazy or slow down. So that can make your eating less too. Slow digestion may cause heartburn or constipation. So that's one another factor. So when eating gets affected, and when your slow digestion like causes heartburn, people tend to avoid eating food, saying that no, I feel like it's not good for me. So they stop eating. Or constipation. So when they start to avoid food, when they start to take less amount of fluid, they end up in constipation, and that causes fear, saying that, okay, if I eat a lot, then I will be constipated and I will be in pain, abdominal pain, bloating, and stuff. So they start avoiding foods. Next slide, Rima. Okay. Yeah, as I told, as the taste changes, the smell can also change, and that will lead to like change of enjoyment factor. And the teeth is very important. So many older people wear dentures or deal with loss of teeth. So the ability of chewing is completely different. So then it causes people like to take a long time to chew on food, and then they lose interest. Like the meal becomes cold and they lose interest and they don't go ahead for next stuff in the plate. And saliva and thirst. So as the age goes up, excuse me, the saliva production also declines, which causes dry mouth, and then that makes it difficult to form a bolus. So like that makes things harder to swallow, and they stop eating much. And then muscles. So strength and muscle mass declines with age. It's not only like the whole body, like it's also like the oromotor area. So that is also a cause where people feel it's too hard for them to eat. It's too tiring. So after like couple of bites, they are just done. Like they don't want to eat more. And yeah, the tongue loses strength with age, and then that also changes the pattern, like how the tongue plays a very important role in like mastication. So it's like it's going to like take the food from front and back, from side to side, and then like it helps to form a cohesive bolus. And then when the strength of the tongue or the coordination changes, then there is a loss of interest in having food. Next slide, Rima. So I just have a simple worded description. So what is dysphagia in simple words? So when you swallow, food passes through your mouth and into a part of your throat called the pharynx. From there, it travels through a long tube called the esophagus. It then enters your stomach. This movement is made possible by a series of actions by your muscles in these areas. If you have dysphagia, the muscles don't work properly and you may not be able to swallow normally. When you breathe, air enters your mouth and pharynx. From there, it travels to your lungs. Normally, a flap called the epiglottis blocks food particles and liquids from going into your lungs. If something does enter your lungs, it's called aspiration. You are much more likely to aspirate if you have dysphagia. Aspiration is a serious problem. It can lead to pneumonia and other complications. Next slide. Prevalence of dysphagia. So, 15 to 30% of patients in hospitals have evidence of swallowing difficulties in association with aspiration of oral contents. 10 to 30% of individuals over the age of 65 are estimated to have a swallowing difficulty. Thanks. Okay, so I just want to go through the stages of swallowing. So the first stage is the voluntary stage, where the food or fluid is taken from the utensil, it's chewed, it's mixed with saliva, it's shaped into a cohesive ball, it's tasted, and the tongue pushes the bolus up and back towards the pharynx. Next slide. Pharyngeal stage. So your voluntary stage is done. Now it's all involuntary. You cannot control anything after this, after the voluntary stage. So the breathing is suspended. The soft palate elevates to stop to stop food entering the nose. The larynx elevates. Vocal folds close. Epiglottis closes over the top of the larynx to prevent air from entering the airway. The muscles of the tongue and pharynx propel the food down to the upper esophageal sphincter. The upper esophageal sphincter opens to allow food into the esophagus. Next slide. The esophageal stage. This is also an involuntary stage. The upper esophageal sphincter closes to stop food being regurgitated. Breathing resumes and food moves down to the stomach. Next slide. So causes of dysphagia. So mostly there are many neurological conditions that can lead to dysphagia. Like I would say like ALS, achalasia, where lower esophageal muscle does not relax enough to allow food into the stomach. Diffuse spasm, the muscles in the esophagus contract in an uncoordinated way. Stroke, esophageal ring, A small portion of esophagus narrows, preventing solid food from passing through sometimes. Eosinophilic esophagitis. So this is like also like an inflammation. Severely elevated levels of eosinophils, a type of white blood cells in the esophagus. This cause a growth, like these eosinophils grow in the uncontrolled way and attack the GI system, leading to vomiting and difficulty with swallowing food. Next slide. Multiple sclerosis. That is also, you all like know it's a progressive neurological disorder. So the central nervous system is attacked by the immune system. It destroys the myelin sheath, which normally protects the nerves, and then it causes like a change in neurological condition. Myasthenia gravis, the muscles under voluntary control become easily tired and the weak because there is a problem with how the nerves stimulate the contraction of the muscle. This is an autoimmune disorder too. Parkinson's disease is a gradually progressive degenerative neurological disorder that impairs the patient's motor skills. Radiation. Some patients who receive radiation therapy to the neck and head area may have swallowing difficulties. Cleft lip and palate, types of abnormal developments of the face due to incomplete fusion of bones in the head, resulting in gaps in the palate and lip to nose area. Scleroderma, it's a group of rare autoimmune diseases where the skin and connective tissues become tighter and harder. Esophageal cancer, esophageal stricture, a narrowing of the esophagus. It is often related to GERD. GERD is um, it's a reflex disorder. What happens is you get regurgitated. Gastroesophageal reflex disorder. Xerostomia, it's dry mouth, where there's no enough saliva to keep the mouth wet. Next slide, Rima. And I will connect my laptop. It's going to be dead soon. Excuse me for a second. Okay, signs and symptoms of dysphagia. So when you see people while eating, they like usually have coughing or choking, changes in their voice after a swallow, like they might have like a wet voice, like a gurgling voice. Gurgling is like a sound, or hoarseness. Hoarseness is also like their voice is more rough. Frequent throat clearing, watery eyes, runny nose. Runny nose is an indication that they are chewing hard and they are trying to get things inside. Facial grimacing, that's very common. They can, you can very well see that they are having difficulty. They just show it in their face that it's too hard for them to like chew and swallow. Complaints of pain with swallowing, that's a common symptom. People always say, I feel something is stuck or something is too hard for me to swallow, it's too painful. And food left in the mouth after swallowing. So, oral residue is a very common symptom. When people cannot do a good oromotor coordinated activity and they cannot swallow completely, you can see bits and portions of food that is left in the mouth. You can see this like in stroke people a lot, where you can, one side of the mouth is like not working for them, and then you can see the food particles are left on the unilateral, like any side which is affected. Difficulty breathing and eating slowly. So these are the common signs and symptoms you can see with patients with dysphagia. And there are more signs and symptoms. There is unexplained weight loss, difficulty controlling food in the mouth. So you can see drooling or losing more, food particles. That can happen in stroke, which is a very common condition you guys have seen already. So you can see people like losing food from their mouth, difficulty starting the swallowing process. Yeah, like what they bite and then it's hard for them to really initiate the movement, inability to control saliva in the mouth. That's what I told, like drooling. Patients may feel like the foot has got stuck. Some patients have dysphagia and are unaware of it. So this is called silent aspiration. This is a very serious condition. Many people don't even show any signs and symptoms, but they will be like silently aspirating. So that can cause pneumonia. So how can we like diagnose? So people might come to the hospital with repeated pneumonia, and they might not have any other conditions like a COPD or anything like that. So in that case, we can think that maybe it's because of silent aspiration. So the food goes into the lungs, the liquids are entering into the lungs without any signs and symptoms. Undiagnosed dysphagia may lead to dehydration and malnutrition. Next slide. Okay. So, what knowledge is required to do a dysphagia assessment? So, we should have a knowledge to identify patients who are at risk for feeding and swallowing disorders, normal anatomy and physiology of swallowing in the adult population, abnormal anatomy and physiology of swallowing in the adult population, effects of medical intervention on swallowing function. So there are many medication that can cause xerostomia, like dry mouth. So we need to know what medications the clients are, and then, like for example, if they are on a water pill, like water pill is like to reduce leg swelling. People are given like water pills, and then to reduce the load on the heart. Some people with like cardiac condition, they are given water pills too. So that makes them like dehydrated, and then the saliva production can be less. So that can make the swallowing more harder. Um, and typical medical diagnosis. So, for example, like I told you, stroke and then multiple sclerosis, ALS. So we know that there is like a neurological disorder. So we might look for the symptoms if they have any, and we can think like maybe this is dysphagia. And effects of normal aging on feeding and swallowing function. So I told you like there are many factors that changes with age. So we should know what are the effects of normal aging. Okay, skills required. So recognize the signs and symptoms of swallowing and feeding disorder, identification of cognitive, communication, behavioral, and psychological factors contributing to swallowing and feeding status, obtain details related to client's current oral intake, example, positioning, feeding dependency. So positioning is like what position the client feeds self. So do they eat in sitting position? Do they eat in a like supine position or sideline position? So we should know what positioning they are in when they are fed. And then feeding dependency. So how much assistance do they need to be fed? What environment they are in, whether they are like in a group setting or in their own home or in an hospital. So what happens when environment is like very disturbing? So when a person has dementia or conditions uh, like some perceptual disturbances, like auditory perceptual disturbances, for example, there might be like sounds of like spoons and like knives, and then there will be many people talking around. So that makes it very hard for them to really like concentrate on eating. So that can actually prevent them from being or enjoying the food. Diet modification. So is there any modification in their diet, or are they eating any regular food? And then compensation. So is there any compensation strategy? Like some people use like smaller spoons if their oral area is smaller. Like I have seen a client with cancer treatment, their lip closure was affected and the lip circumference was like very limited. So they started to using like baby spoons to feed themselves. So what are the compensation strategy they are using to self feed? Okay, what are the other skills required? So select, administer, and interpret dysphagia screening test, Communicate the findings and recommendations to client, family, and other healthcare professionals. So we should have all these skills to get start the dysphagia assessment. Okay, the next slide. Okay, so clinical history. So client history is very important. What is a client's condition? What is the referral source? And what is the reason for referral? History of present illness, as I told you, whether it's like pneumonia or any other cardiac condition or respiratory condition or like a gastroenteric condition. So we should really know what's going on with the client. Swallowing history, if there is any signs or symptoms of dysphagia, or any aspiration. Like many people like will always say, my mother like drinks fluid and then she always keeps on coughing. So that's one factor that we have to really ask the family, the patient, and the care providers if they have seen them, like the patient is having any difficulties during swallowing fluids or like solids. What are their baseline diet, current diet, previous swallowing assessments, secretion management, diet tolerance. So baseline diet is before hospitalization. Current diet, what is the diet in the hospital? Previous swallowing assessments, if any. Secretion management, do they need a suction machine or can they bring all their secretions out by themselves, or can they swallow their secretions without losing it like by themselves? So we should know all these things. And the diet tolerance. Some people have many allergies, especially in foreign countries. I have seen like people have a lot of allergies for nuts and like gluten and lactose. And so it's like we also should know what is their diet tolerance. And medical history, as I told, metabolic, cardiac, endocrine, systemic, gastrointestinal, neurological, structural abnormalities, radiation exposure, and staging of cancer. Next slide. Okay, any surgical history? In many people have like esophageal surgery or oromotor surgery, so we have to know what the surgical history is. Respiratory history, as I told, the pulmonary disease, pneumonia, smoking, oxygen needs, and method of delivery. So if they are dependent on external oxygen, or we need to know what method of delivery they are having. And then respiratory rate, recent and current chest status, and then intubation history, tracheostomy history, ventilator history. So all these are like they are actually doing a surgical procedure on your trachea, and so we need to know whether they had anything like this previously, because if they had an intubation done or a tracheostomy done in the past, then there might be chances that there are difficulties in swallowing in the future. So that's one thing we should know. And then psychosocial history, and any communication or cognitive problems, uh, like whether the client is PO intake is like parenteral route intake, whether they can eat by their mouth. So some people cannot eat by their mouth because of problems with, like as I told, neuromuscular or oromotor, or there might be like anything on their esophagus. So all these things can make them like a unsafe person to eat. Then they might put them on a nasogastric tube or a PEG tube. So we should know what kind of like PO intake, or whether they can eat through mouth or whether they need an external feeding devices. And then nutrition and hydration, allergies, are they allergic to any food, medication? And oral health, we can see that too, because many people, if they don't have proper dentition, they don't even care to like brush their teeth. And that can actually, what happens is the food particles can get stuck in their mouth. And then when they lie down, that can go into their lungs and cause pneumonia. Okay, so mobility status, how much they can like move around to see if they have like a good like a pulmonary clearance. Feeding status, level of independence, positioning issues, adaptive equipment, behavioral concerns, and code status and goals of care. So code status and goals of care is mostly to the Western countries. What that means is, so what is a goal of care is like, what is my goal of care? So do I need to be resuscitated if I have a cardiac event? So most people are like elderly population, they don't want people to jump on their chest and do the CPR. So what they do is they decide in advance and say, no, I don't want any advance aggressive procedures. So that is a goals of care, and code status is also similar to that. So whether they need resuscitation, whether they need aggressive procedure or not. If the client is in comfort care, then we don't really we treat them, but we don't really poke them with needles, or we don't really do any aggressive procedure. So that happens in Western country. They tend to have a paperwork done on it. So when the client comes in with the dysphagia, we go and ask, like, what is the code status or what is the goals of care for this client? So if the client have chosen comfort care, then um, we won't recommend strongly our strategies, because they have chosen to live on their comfort. So we're not going to disturb that. Okay, actually, I'm in the basement, which is super cold, and my jaw is trembling. I'm going to move to a spot which is more like warmer. Even though it's summer in Canada, it's so cold in the basement. So just hang on, please. I'll get a heater otherwise. I'm sorry for so much disturbance. It's extremely cold in the basement, so I really feel my jaws are trembling and I'm like talking like an okay, so I have a jacket now. I think it will be better. Okay, so okay, observation. So what you can see in a patient, so you have to observe for structures that are like a oral structure, the tooth, the lips, the jaw, uh, and then the throat clearance. So if you see, structures should be examined at rest and during the movement to obtain information about differences in muscle tone, strength, and range of movement. Sensation of facial and lingual structures can be grossly assessed with a cotton tip applicator. So even with the earbuds, what we use, like a fresh new one, you can like apply on the facial and the lingual structures and see if they have the sensation. The following cranial nerves are essential for eating and swallowing: trigeminal nerve, facial nerve, glossopharyngeal nerve, vagus nerve, and hypoglossal nerve. Next slide. Okay. So on observation and examination, you can see that this lady has a deviation. And then you can see one side of the cheek is like appears different. The lips are like slanting. So this is an indication that there is some issue with her oromotor coordination or the muscle tone. So structural and sensation abnormalities. Observe facial and oral structures listed above at rest for differences in muscle tone, deviations, and altered sensation. Oral cavity, you can see like the amount of saliva, condition of mucosa, presence of plaque, the deposit in the teeth, and other secretions, and then the dentition status. So when you ask them to open their mouth, you can check all these things. Next slide. So this is the assessment form. I split it into 3 different slides just to make it bigger so that you guys can see. So first is the verbal consent for assessment. So we in Canada, consent is very important. If the client consents, only we can proceed to the next step. The goals of care, as I told you, whether they are like comfort care or do they need like all kind of care. So we need to make a note of it. The medical history, who referred this client, the allergies, and then the medication delivery, like whether they are giving it through mouth or whether they are giving through IV. So we should know. Excuse me, we should know that. The current diet, whether they are taking oral, and then what is the texture of the diet, and then whether they are non-oral. So as I told, like a GI tube or an NG tube. So we should know what kind of feeding methods they are on. Respiratory status, to see if there's any pneumonia in the previous thing, and whether they are oxygen dependent, whether they are like compromised, like a smoker, compromised uh, like respiratory system. Risk factors, multiple medical problems, dependent feeding, dependent oral hygiene, reduced alertness, poor positioning, whether they are tube fed, whether there is a change in voice quality, whether there was a tracheostomy, whether they were a smoker, whether they have immobility, do they have like a good coughing ability, because sometimes cough is a protective sensation. So when you have food on a wrong path, you can cough and clear it. But if they have a weak cough, then they can't clear their particles, food particles or saliva. And then whether they have dysarthria, so that is like a in coordination in the joint movement, like a jaw movement might be like too much, and they can get tired, they can't chew. So these are things we have to see. And if they have reduced cognition, whether they can like, so reduced cognition is very important factor too, because if they can't follow directions, then even though if you diagnose and give them a lot of instructions, then they won't follow it. So they don't have a memory to follow it, they don't have the information processing ability to follow it. So we need to take that into account. And then if any other factors that can be a risk for the condition. Reported concerns, as I told, like whether they have choking episodes, whether they cough when eating or drinking, and what they have trouble with most, like solid foods or fluids. Weight loss, is there anything in the previous 6 months? And food sticking, so do they say that the food is stuck in mouth? And then whether they have like a heartburn or a reflex, prolonged meal time, fatigue, and other factors. Next slide. Okay. And then summary of assessment, you can like just write a small note on it. And then the recommendations. I'll come back to this slide to talk about the recommendations. Okay. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so yeah, so what is the positioning and mobility status? And then the communication or voice, like what is their voice quality, whether it's a wet voice or a hoarse voice. So we have to look at that. And then oral motor exam. So this is one important part. I'll be showing you the pictures. So when you ask them to like open up their mouth, then you can observe for like whether the function and structure is adequate, whether the dentition, like the teeth is good, whether they are able to open their jaw in a full, like a full range of motion. So you can check that. So can we go to the next slide? Okay, so the oral mechanism examination. So I'm just going to go very fast with this because the pictures are self-explanatory. So you should ask the person to say, like open their mouth as wide as they can, and then give a good smile and show their teeth. So when they do a big wide mouth, you can check their range of motion and then see the structures. And then when they do a smile, you can see whether there is a change in the muscle tone on one side of the like face. Next slide. Rima, next slide, please. Sorry. Rima.
Ma'am, change the slide.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can't see the next slide. So
Can everyone else see?
yeah, I can see it now.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe because of the
Yeah,
internet connection.
that's what. Okay, so when you see the oral mechanism examination for the tongue, you can ask them to do a protrusion and a retraction. So can you stick out your tongue? And then you can ask them to like take it back. So, and then the elevation of tongue tip and whether they can like elevate the tip of the tongue and then take it to the back of the tongue with mouth open. They have to fold their tongue as much as possible. And then repeated articulation of ta, 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 ta. So that can actually tell the strength of the tongue. You can see when you say ta, the tip of the tongue touches the palate. And then ka, 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 ka. So that is like a depression. So the tongue goes down. And then strength against resistance. So you can use a tongue depressor and then ask them to elevate the tongue against the resistance. And then lateralization of tongue into sulci. So you can ask them to like touch the corner of the lips on each side. That is like the tongue lateralization. And rapid lateralization of tongue tip between lip corners. So you have to ask them to make it fast so that you can see the speed on coordination of the tongue. And then you can also ask them to like touch the tongue onto their cheeks inside. So that is also to check their range of motion. And then licking of lips in circular motion. So that's a range of motion of the tongue you can see. Next slide. Yeah, so this is the same what I told you. Ask them to touch the corner of the lips. Next slide. Stick your tongue out and push your tongue strongly against this depressor. So this is all to check the range of motion and the muscle strength on the tongue. Next slide. Pucker your lips, so as if like you are trying to give a kiss to. So that is also an uh, you can see like how well the lips are performing, like how strong they are. And then lip closure at rest and lip purse and retract. So it's like the second picture. You can ask them to do a pursing of lip and then ask them to retract. Puff your cheeks full of air and hold it in. So you can ask them to like hold the air like and then like you can like tell to hold them for a long time. Okay, next slide. Clench your teeth. This is also to check how well coordinated and how strong they can perform the movement. Next slide. Okay, so the jaw range of movement to see whether they have like any problem in movement, and then like we can determine that might be the cause for the chewing issues. And then open and close against resistance. So you can keep your hand and then ask them to like push against your resistance so that you can check their like the joints strength. Yep. Next slide. Show me your teeth while you frown. This is also for your lips and then the oral muscles. And then facial nerve, like raise your eyebrows. So that's a test for your facial nerve. Next slide. Close your eyes tightly. That's also like a facial nerve test. Next slide. Okay. So to test the larynx, request patient to phonate a prolonged ah. So you should ask them, can you say ah for like how much ever they can. So they can say ah. So you can record the minutes. So you can see how their performance is. And then rate the voice quality. You can see whether it's like a good high tone. Some people has so it's like when they have like problems with their strength and coordination, you can see a lot of differences in their voice quality. And then volitional cough strength, you can ask them, can you give me a cough, like can you cough uh, like a as strong as you can. Then the client will say, so when we ask this, we will know how strong their cough, like a protective response is. And then you can like check the quality of the cough, whether it's dry or wet. So many people, like when they have like a chesty, like a cough, like a cold in their chest, you can see it's a wet cough, and then wet sound you can hear. And then to check the palate and pharynx, observe palate at rest and while patient quickly phonates ah. So when you ask them to say ah, you can check their palate elevating. So when you can ask them to open up their mouth, say ah, and you can look into their mouth so you can see the palate is elevating. Touch cotton tip applicator to posterior pharyngeal wall to elicit gag reflex. So we generally don't do this because many time in acute care we already have like very sick people, so we don't really do it. But if it is like an outpatient setting, then we do this. Motor speech, observe for speech production for signs of motor weakness and incoordination and signs of motor planning difficulties. So whether they have problems in like producing words, whether they have problems in moving their lips. So you can like when you ask them to like say ah, if they are like closing their mouth and they don't understand, or they understand what to do but they cannot open up the mouth, so it's like a motor planning difficulty. So we have to look for all these symptoms. And oral apraxia, so ask patient to pretend to blow out a candle, click their tongue and whistle. So when you ask these instructions, you have to see whether they have difficulty following this. Next slide. Okay, ask them to do a dry swallow. So just tell them, can you do a dry swallow? Like, can you try to swallow your saliva and then see, and then you can check with your four fingers, you can keep it high. Don't compress it. Don't press it hard. Just keep it like a very light manner, and you can see the elevation of the hyoid, and then the movement of the hyoid and larynx when they do a dry swallow. So use four-finger method to estimate timing of pharyngeal swallow and excursion or elevation of the hyoid bone and larynx. So we always tell them to do a dry swallow, and then followingly we give them a sip of water or something to see, check what is the timing, whether they take a longer time with the liquid, uh, or it's like, is there a change in time when it's dry and when there is a liquid? So we need to compare that. Next slide. Okay. Oh, this is just a picture I got. So this is what I do. So I always see the patient eating, which is not good. They don't feel comfortable many times. So we try to minimize the watching, but we try to like look at them to get more information. Okay, next slide. Okay, so standard assessment trays. So we have a standard assessment tray request. So when we ask for a dysphagia assessment tray, we get a Tetra Pak or a half a cup of thin liquid, that's water, and then a nectar consistency level 1 liquid, a honey consistency level 2 liquid, and a pudding consistency level 3 liquid. I will show you the differences in the following slides. And then a piece of bread and a package of crackers. Next slide. And then some minced or regular meat, diced vegetables, and a mixed consistency item, which is like a soup or a fruit in a juice, and then a placebo capsule and a 5 teaspoons. So why do we have an assessment tray standard is we work in a big organization. So when we order the cafeteria, like we need a dysphagia tray, we want to make sure that all the hospitals, all the organization, centers, they all receive the same product or same tray when we ask for it. So we don't need to have more confusion. So we just tell dysphagia assessment tree and we get this. Okay. Okay, so what is the difference between the fluid, which I was talking earlier? So thin fluids are, for example, like water, coffee, tea, milk, jello, ice cream, milkshakes, and sherbet. So if you see, the thin liquid can easily flow through the fork. It just like flows like drops very easily. And the nectar thick, for example, like a tomato juice, it quickly sinks through the prongs, but it's comparatively lesser than the water. And then the honey thick is like, as you all know, the honey is like when you take it in a fork, it takes longer time to get inside the prongs. And then pudding is also like very thicker. So that's the most thickest among this. And it doesn't go through the prongs very easily. You need to really like shake it hard to do that. Okay, so the next slide. Yeah, these are some examples of like what are the fluid consistencies are. You can like go over it later. Like a very simple thing is like buttermilk is all like level 1 nectar thick, and like honey thick is, as I told, like a honey, and then like pudding thick is like a porridge, like a oats porridge or barley porridge. So these are all like pudding thick. Okay, so what do you see before the meal? When you go to a client's room, you see for the dependence level, medication administration, what is the route they are administering, what is a dentition, what is the consistency of the meal or fluid they are taking, and then correct what is the positioning, what is the alertness level, whether the client is alert or like in is not able to respond. So you need to look that too. And respiratory rate, whether it's too high or whether it's too low, and oral secretion control. Okay, next slide. Okay, during the meal, you can see whether the client is like highly distractible or impulsive. Some people like they just eat so fastly, like they just like take 10 spoons in like 3 seconds. So you really need to have an eye on it. Or whether they are distractible. Like sometimes people are like so distracted, they don't concentrate on what they are eating. And that can be a risk factor for aspiration. And then, yeah, increased rate of spooning, drinking, excessive size of mouthful. Yeah, they take like bigger bites. They just scoop the whole tablespoon of things and like eat it. Patient's ability to maintain correct positioning during the meal. And then because during the meal, your hands are off the table. So the balance, if they don't have good, they can like lose balance and then like have problems. Coughing or choking on foods and fluids, repeated throat clearing after a swallow. So you can see that when they eat, they do a multiple throat clearing. So they try to clear whatever they have. So they do that repeatedly. A wet or a gurgly voice after a swallow. So that is an indication that the fluid is not going in a right way. So uh, after like drinking, you can feel like it's so wet voice. Okay, and then you can also see if there is like a oral residue, like if something is left in their mouth, excessive or labored chewing pattern, like if they have so much time to chew on like a small thing, then you should note that down. And then spillage of food, if there is like food or fluid that's lost control. And then pain and discomfort on swallowing. Yep, next slide. So after the oral intake, you have to look for the respiratory change. If there's like increased shortness of breath. So what happens is if your food or liquid goes and stuck in your throat, then you start to like breathe faster. You are in an anxious situation that you can't breathe. So you are really choking at that moment. So you have to really watch for it. Change chest condition. So like you can feel you can see that after the oral intake, if you go out and then like the nurses will say the client was so chesty, the client was bringing up cold, bringing up phlegm. So you can like really have to watch what happened after the oral intake has been done. An increase in temperature, that's an indication of pneumonia, like something goes into your lungs are infected, then you start the inflammatory process, and then fever, temperature, and then like coughing, shortness of breath can all follow after your assessment. So you really have to be very careful. And then, yeah, so the advice, what we say is always like ask the patient to stay upright for 20 to 30 minutes after they have taken the food. Okay, next slide. So these are the cranial nerves. I'm not going to go into detail of all these things. It's all like what are the cranial nerves involved in swallowing and voicing. So you guys can go ahead and read this after the presentation. So it's like olfactory nerve, oculomotor nerve, trochlear nerve. Next slide. Okay. Okay. So I'm coming into dysphagia recommendation. So when you see there's like a lot of changes, or when you see that there's problem with dysphagia, then you can always ask for a modification in the texture. So what is a modification is change in the way the diet is cooked, or change in the way the diet is prepared, or change in the way the diet is presented. So if you see like you can see like for elderly people, if you think it's not dysphagia, but it is just it's hard for them to like chew because of dental problems, then you can ask for a easy to chew diet, which is not for dysphagia management, but it is just for comfort. And then if there is like any and then you can also ask for a cut diced diet, that is like cutting the meat or cutting the fruits and vegetables into small pieces, so that it's easy for them to chew. So if you think the client has dysphagia and then you feel like a change in the diet texture will help them, then you have other options. So you can have like a pureed diet. Pureed diet is nothing but like a baby food. You put the beans in a mixer or a blender and like blend it, or you put the food in a blender to blend it. So it's like a baby food, like a soft food. Minced food is like when the food is like cut into very, very small pieces. So the meat, the vegetables are all like super finely cut. So it's more easier for them. And then dysphagia soft. So dysphagia soft is regular food, but it's cooked very, very soft. So if you take a pasta or a rice, you can like mash it with your fork or a spoon. So it's cooked very soft, and then you can like prescribe that for the client. So you can also ask for like, okay, other things are good, but the bread is only problem. Then you can ask for pureed bread products. And then you can ask for no mixed consistency. For example, like if you have a soup with vegetables, people have difficulty handling both of the texture at the same time. So we always tell like no mixed consistency. It means that they can't have bites of vegetables and fluid on a same bowl of a soup. So what they will do is either they will like give them a clear soup, or they like puree the vegetables and then like mix it with the soup. So they try to like reduce that mixed consistency. And then thick fluid, so you can prescribe a nectar thick fluid or a honey thick fluid or pudding thick fluid. So these are the modifications. Yeah, so puree to the texture of a pudding or a mousse, soft, moist, homogeneous, smooth, and cohesive with particles of the same size. So it's a description of the puree diet. So it is smaller than cooked cream of wheat. So cream of wheat is nothing like um, Goduma rava kanji. So when they like cook it, it's more smaller than Goduma rava. So it's smaller than the wheat, cream of wheat, or applesauce. So solids are thick enough to spoon up a minimum of 7.5 to 10 ml on a teaspoon. So solids are really thick. So it's like if you take it in a teaspoon, it can accommodate like a 10 ml. No liquid separation when served. So when they serve it, there should not be like a solid piece and a liquid separating. So for every so if we like, for example, like rice and sambar is like a mixed consistency. So if you are going to do that, then make sure that the rice is like really like mashy, and then you can add sambar and mix it. So if it is like two different textures, two different consistency, then it can cause a problem. Okay, next slide. Okay, so these are some pictures of pureed diet. If you see, it's all like blended in a blender or a mixie, and it's all like a baby food. So the last one is actually a pureed bread. They have blended a bread and they have put some jam on it. So yeah, the next slide. Is it all dinner time for you guys? Okay, next slide. Okay, so a minced diet, which is a dysphagia management. So minced diet is like they have cut all the things into very small thin pieces, so you can see like it's easier for them to like chew and swallow. Yeah, next slide. So what is dysphagia soft diet? Firm foods are diced to 1 centimeter cubed or less on the longer side. Foods that can be mashed by a patient using a fork in one hand and can be served without cutting. Tender, moist meat, poultry, or organ meat with sauces or gravies prepared in one of the following ways. So if you see the meat is diced, it's tender, mashable meat, or legumes or tofu. So if you see, they can like mash it with their own fork. Meats or processed meats are shaved, so it's like you can use like a shaver and shave the meat, and then they are diced or they are diced. Tender, boneless, flaked fish. Even the fish will be like flaked in the sense they will be like cut into small pieces, and then mashable eggs. Yeah, next slide. Okay, soft cooked vegetables and soft ripe fruit diced to 1 centimeter, like diced carrots, mixed peas and carrots, canned diced peaches. So everything is diced into small. Mashable cooked vegetables and soft ripe mashable fruit. Um, yeah, and then cooked vegetables that are fibrous or stringy should be minced. So yeah, and then the salad should be like finely shredded kolsha, lettuce, and other leafy greens. So it's all like super, super, super tiny. Soft breads, buttered toast, buns, biscuits, moist muffins served with a spread, cooked cereals, cold cereals softened in milk, fork tender mashable pasta, rice, couscous, barley served in a sauce or a casserole, all yogurt, custard or milk pudding, smooth or with small pieces of fruit and soft small seeds and cheese. So these are all like dysphagia soft food that you can offer. So this is how a dysphagia soft food look like. So it's all diced into very small pieces, and the bread is very soft and moist. Yeah, next slide. So easy to chew diet is a non-dysphagia prescription. So as I told, like if you don't see that there's a problem with swallowing, but it's just a problem with swallowing, problem with chewing, then you ask for a easy to chew diet where like it's all like mashable and like easy to chew, like softly cooked thing, and like very uh, the meat are all like cut and diced for them. Yeah, cut diced non-dysphagia. Next slide. So this is the mixed consistency soup which I was talking about. So if you see there's a dry cereal and a cold milk and a fruit. So these are all different texture and different sized and different consistency. So this can cause a problem while swallowing. And then if you see the soup, it's like vegetables and the broth is like separated in the first plate, so that is hard. So what you can do is blend them and then give them as a soup. And the third picture is also a mixed consistency where you can see a pasta and a soup. So we tend to avoid this mixed consistencies. So this is the fluid consistency. So if you see, I have added the viscosity range. So if it is like 1 to 50 viscosity range, it's thin. And the nectar like is 51 to 350, and then honey like is 351 to 1750, and spoon think is greater than 1750. Okay. Okay, dysphagia documentation. So I'm just going to read a scenario and then we can go ahead. So the patient has been admitted to the ER with a diagnosis of stroke. The patient experienced their left arm completely not working for about 5 minutes. They called the ambulance and was brought to the ER. There was no family, caregivers, or friends present. There is no prior history of cardiovascular events or any other major ailment. Patient complains coughing with liquids, difficulty controlling food while chewing, swallowing, and has oral residue. Okay, next slide. So this is a case scenario what I was talking, like the positioning. Can you see the positioning problems? Um, the person is not supported well on his left arm, and then the table is too high and it's so far from her. And then if you see in the bed, the client is in a supine position with a very minimal head elevation. And then, as I said, the food is not accessible and the left side is not positioned well. So this all can make a feeding session more problematic. And then this kind of like positioning can cause choking and like aspiration. So this is one of the big role which we play. We always go and look for how to position the client in a good way or in an optimal way so that the head, hip, leg, like trunk are all supported. So there's a big difference in the first picture and this, so that you can see the client is able to enjoy the meal, the client is able to be independent, the left arm is like supported. So it's a better positioning compared to the first one. Okay, next slide. So, as an OT, we always think about like other recommendations, like whether we can make it more helpful for the client, right? So there is a non-slip mat in the middle picture where the client can secure the plate very good, and then the cup is also secured with a non-slip surface, and then the client's food is placed in a well arranged, organized way so that they can see it well, and they can uh, they can access it well. So, and then the built up utensils are also given so that if there is a change in their strength, range of motion, in their grip, so they can use like built up utensils. And these are the drinking straws with clips, which you can put it on the cup. It stays on the same spot. And then the third picture is like one way straw. So when you suck the fluid, the water comes and then it stays in there. So whatever you suck is like staying there. So you don't lose the liquid back. So when the patient is having problems with their oral motor strength, it's hard for them to like keep sucking and sucking. So this is a one-way suction straw. So if you suck, the fluid is uh, left inside the straw for the second suck. Okay, next slide. So these are the various dysphagia recommendations from an OT. Can be like a rolled edge bowl, like a high wall plate, a nosy cup. Or when they have like a neck range limitation, you can use a nosy cup so that they don't have to extend their neck for drinking. And then a cup with a handle, and then a rocker knife, and then yeah, like there are so many adaptations that you can prescribe to help with their coordination, range of motion, and strength issues. Yep, next slide. Okay, so how do I document when I see a patient with like difficulties? So when we go do the assessment, all our oral mechanism or examination is done, and then we see them during the meal, like how they are performing and everything, and then what we do is like we speak to the client that these are the findings and these are the recommendations, and then we see whether the client is agreeable for that. And if the client is agreeable, then we go to the physician's section of the file, and then we write dysphagia recommendations. So the dysphagia recommendation should include what kind of solids they can tolerate. So if, for example, if we took that stroke lady, I actually put her on a dysphagia soft solid. So it's more softer and easier. Minced meat option, teaspoon only, no tablespoon, just because if it is too much inside the mouth, the because of the muscle tone and the muscle power issue, it's hard for them to handle, and they fatigue easily. So I put a recommendation for a teaspoon. And in the fluids, because the client had told she has difficulty, or like she was coughing with the fluid, we usually like check the nectar thick and then the honey thick. If the client is like comfortable with the nectar thick, then we go nectar thick with no straw or straw. It's up to you. Like you can see some people when they have difficulty in controlling the sucking, so they suck a lot of fluid and they end up coughing. So we say no straw. But if you see the client is comfortable with nectar thick with a straw, then you can recommend nectar thick with straw. And then no ice creams, because ice cream is something, when you see it look like a solid, but when you put inside the mouth, it melts right away and becomes a thin liquid. So that's a no. And medications, so because she told like she has difficulty swallowing solid, we made it as a crushed pill. So we will ask the nurses to crush the pill and then give it with pudding or yogurt. uh, or what other recommendations could be is whole pills, one at a time. They can take whole pill one at a time. So not like having 10 pills all at once, but one at a time. And then sit upright. So positioning. So positioning should be sit upright for all meals. Weak side to be supported with pillows. Head and back to be supported with pillow or a backrest and a headrest. And then what level of assistance she might need would be a setup assistance for unpacking the meal, juice containers, and condiments, because one hand is affected, their grip strength is affected, so they can't handle that. So we can ask for a setup assistance. So the cafeteria people will come, open everything, and keep for them and set it up for them. And then supervision as needed. So this is one another thing. If the client is very impulsive, very distractible, has cognitive issues, then we would say supervision is needed. Or if they need one, like a more assistant, then we say one person assistance, which means the person will be fed by a caregiver. And then 45 to 60 minutes upright positioning post meal. So they have to sit upright after their meals. And then we have to say oral care post meals, because this client has oral residue. So as I told you, if the plaque or the oral residue gets inside the lungs, the client can get pneumonia. So we have to ask the nurses or the client to do brushing after their meals. And then the dysphagia team to reassess after 2 to 3 days. So we always go and try to reassess after a couple of days to see if there is a change in their condition, if they can put them back on their same diet, because nobody likes altered diet. See, for example, if you blend the biryani in a mixie and eat it, will you guys like to eat it? No, no way. So we always like to be back on our regular texture. So we keep on reassessing them and see if we can put them back on their regular diet. But there are chances that they can't go back to their own diet. We might have to say them that this is the problem and you might have to stick on to this recommendation for your life. Uh, so there is one more thing which I wanted to add is the level 2 assessment, which I told is like a video fluoroscopic study. So when we, as a level 1 assessor, if we can't determine what is going on, and if we can't help them, then we send them to a special study, which is called a VFSS, video fluoroscopic swallow study, where they give a barium liquid. They tell the patient to swallow the barium liquid, and they take series of x-rays from your mouth to your stomach. And then in that way, we can see physiologically or anatomically what is going on during the swallow. And then they will like further recommend things after that. Okay, any questions?
Hello, students. Do you have any questions? Do you have anything else to say, everyone? I think they don't have any
Yep, that's good,
questions.
Rima.
Um,
Mona has something to say.
yes, ma'am. Hi, ma'am.
Okay.
Happy to see you again, ma'am. And thank you so much. As we don't have questions because as you have elaborately explained all these things. Me final year, I think as a final year we have like we learned a lot to manage dysphagia management. As we also we have went to the cancer ward, so there
Hello, Mona. I think there is some internet
Okay, I
problem
think
with
we
her.
lost Mona.
Yes. Uh, so I have one doubt, ma'am. So when you said ice cream is a no-no, so isn't it liquid? So isn't it easy to go down your throat? So
Yeah, so what happens is if the
how?
see it's easy to go, but if there's a problem in between the coordination, it goes into your lungs. So that's why we say no, no, because when you see that it's like a solid, people think like, oh, it looks like a pudding, so why can't I have it? But when you put it in your mouth, it right away it becomes like a thin liquid, so it is very easy to flow in an uncoordinated way. So that can make things more.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why we change the fluid consistency. So when we see that when a person drinks water and like starts coughing and like you can like really see they are in a big
Mm-hmm.
trouble, then we tell like, okay, this guy has some problem in the throat. And then we see like this is not a safe option. So let's go to a nectar thick. It's a little more thick, so it's not fast to go down, because handling the
Okay.
like the fast action, if there is an incoordination, the fast action
Mm-hmm.
is not there, and there is a mismatch between um, the closing of airway and opening of throat, right? So we need to have that match. If there
Okay.
is an incoordination, then what happens when you have to close your airway, the airway still remains open, and then it can go into the airway.
Okay.
So then it causes infection in the lungs.
Okay.
So that is a problem. So yeah, so that
Okay.
incoordination is a
Mm-hmm.
problem. That's why we go to highly
Okay.
viscous fluid, so it is very slow and the patient can handle it easily. The airway takes longer time to close, so the fluid takes longer time to flow. So that matches that in coordination.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Mona, are you back?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, some network issues. I think.
It's okay.
Uh, on the very left, I don't know. Okay, but it was really a brief session about dysphagia management. As we learned very few of it somewhere in the books, but a specific topic of this will gives us detailed management and how to handle the patients. So it's really nice, and in your morning time, you have taken this much of time and. Um um, Presenting for us, ma'am, and hope many presentations from you will wait for you, ma'am. Thank
Sure,
you
I
so much.
should. Mona, thanks for that. In India, when I did my education, dysphagia was like, as you told, it's like it's all on the books. I didn't get a chance to do a
Yes.
dysphagia assessment in India, but then when I came to Canada, when I started to work in acute care, it was an expectation that OT should be a person in the dysphagia team. First, it was really very shocking to me, and it was really like a little uncomfortable, because what happens is if you don't, every part of the assessment is important. If you leave the patient after food and they like can choke and like aspirate, if you leave them in an unsafe way, so really like we need to be very careful in prescribing the diet texture and the fluid texture. So it was a challenging, but they actually trained me. We have like courses to train ourselves, and then my speech language pathologist was like a mentor. So she actually like shadowed me when I did the assessment, like maybe 5 to 6 assessments, and that helped me to build confidence. So now how it works is like in here any two professionals should be there for the dysphagia assessment. or the SLP can do her the assessment by herself. So most of the dysphagia assessment is done by like an OT here. So it's a challenging area because it's more like it can like take your life if you don't do it properly. But it's good. Good. You will like learn eventually. It will be good. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, of course, true.
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I think we can wrap this session up. I would really like to thank you, ma'am, for like Mona said, very early in this morning, you have agreed to take a session guest lecture for our students. So, on behalf of Department of Occupational Therapy, Sri Ramachandra, and on behalf of all the faculties and students, I would like to extend our gratitude towards you. And the session was very informative, and especially the modifications that you mentioned and about the texture of the food. So all these things we have to keep in mind while we are doing a dysphagia assessment. So that is very important, and it was well explained to us, even though there was technical delay, but it was worth the wait, and it was very informative. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, and you have a nice day today.
Thank you so much. And I'm heading to work. See you all. Next time I'm going to send the PPT to you, Rima, and then like we can go ahead. It's little like too hard for to
Okay,
handle like things like this, especially when I am in the basement. I don't get
sure.
help from my husband, so it's like yeah. So next time I'll do that. And from the students, like please send like your concerns or like anything that I can improve to make it better. So that will be advantageous for both of us rather than just like just going on like talking and talking and talking.